the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry-on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. This is me over here. And welcome to the latest edition of Views on the News. Now, the guy you saw heading up there a minute ago, that's Bryce Cornell. He's our panelist from Philadelphia. And we also have today, we have Guy Otten from Manchester and Tersia du Plessis from South Africa, a little town called Worcester. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming, you guys. This is unusual. Yeah. It's Wednesday. Well, guys applies to females as well. It's feminine guys, guys and gals. So unisex. It's a Wednesday. Yes, indeed. It's a Wednesday because I was stricken with a malady on Sunday. So we're catching up, and this is a late recording of Views on the News. So here we go. First item. Pope Francis has told Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky he is constantly praying for peace. So what do you think? What is your reaction to that?
Can I start, since I'm the only female around? But before I start, I have to say that I have the honor of sharing a birthday with Volodymyr Zelensky. So I'm very proud that I can say that. We celebrate our birthday on the same day. And then I was just wondering, Zelensky is a former comedian, and I think he's a really smart man. So I was wondering whether there was any reporting on his response to the Pope's prayers since February. That was the first thing I was wondering about. And the second thing I was wondering about is it seems that the Pope's prayers aren't that effective. So, because it's been going for more than a year. So I was wondering about that. And that's basically what I'd like to ask. So does a question count as a comment?
It'll do. Yes, thank you. So you're not very impressed with the announcement that the Pope is praying for peace then? Anybody else?
I mean, there might be some more effective means or measures he could take to promote peace. He could offer to mediate between the parties. I think
he's done that, actually.
Oh, has he? Right. Well, that I count as something that is tangible and potentially productive. But I'm afraid praying, obviously, as an atheist, I don't accept that prayer is meaningful other than an expression of, you're talking to an imaginary being.
Yes, I know. Yes. Well, there you go. So what do you think? Would a constant invocation to the Lord would that be useful?
No.
No.
Well, the easy answer has been given by Bryce, but if I were charitable towards the Lord God Almighty and his eminency representative, the Pope on earth, then even being charitable, I mean, it's been going for a year and a half almost now. So surely it can be, there's only a few possibilities. The one is that God's not listening to the Pope. So what chance do us mere mortals have of God listening to us? And the other chance is maybe if there's a God, he doesn't hear the prayers or he's not willing to do something about it. And to quote somebody called Euthyphro, we have a dilemma. And I think that some of us are stuck on the horns of this dilemma. And I'm just very curious. I would still like to know what President Zelensky's reaction was and whether he has any faith in these prayers.
Well, they shook hands, and let me see what I've got on this. I don't think I've got much on this. They discussed the humanitarian and political situation caused by the ongoing war during a meeting that lasted 40 minutes. So we don't really know what Zelensky. I'm not sure that he's spoken about his reaction in front of a microphone.
He doesn't have time for that nonsense. That's why it only
I think-
lasted for 14 minutes.
I
He's
think
got a
so.
war to fight, you know?
Yeah, you could be right. So moving to UK, we have a former Archbishop of York, not Canterbury, who originated in Ghana. His name is John Sentamu. I guess he's naturalized British, and he's risen through the ranks of the Church of England to the exalted position of Archbishop, and he's retired from that role, but he retired and continued as an honorary assistant bishop in the Diocese of Newcastle. However, he has now been forced to step down from that role because of a review into how he handled a child sex abuse allegation. The claim is that he failed to act on the claim made by a victim. This is interesting because the victim himself joined the church. So his name is Mr. Innocent, not innocent, but Innocent. And he is now a retired vicar, but way back when he was 16 in the 1980s, he was abused by another member of the church. It gets complicated. Reverend Trevor Devamanikam. Now, Devamanikam, the victim, back in 2013, told senior clergy about the abuse, including now Lord Sentamu, who was at that time Archbishop of York, and eventually the police did get to hear about this, and Devamanikam was charged with 6 serious sexual offences involving men, I think, and that was in 2017. Just before he was due to appear in court, he killed himself. He was found dead the day before.
Well, John, normally I don't prepare for these shows. I do it quite impromptu, but today I actually had an hour to spare, and I prepared and I wrote a comment down, and I was thinking that in a rare case of, I suppose, relatively mild justice, there was actually a church clergyman who has suffered some form of consequence for his handling of child abuse. So I suppose he thinks of himself as a victim in a strange way. I don't know, maybe he doesn't, maybe he accepts it, but it's very unusual that one hears that clergymen who handle these matters in very dubious manners actually do suffer any form of consequence. So I'm actually quite impressed that this former archbishop was forced to quit his job. So to me, I'm hoping it's a good tiding of better things to come as far as justice for the victims of sexual abuse by church officials.
Yes, well, not many years ago, he would have just been moved to a different parish, wouldn't he?
If that, possibly promoted, kicked
And
upstairs.
this is the individual who was found dead?
No, it's a complicated story. There is a victim whose name is Vicar Matthew Innocent. He's retired. But when he was 16, he was abused by the Reverend Trevor Devamanikam, who, when he complained to the senior clergy about having been abused, the then Archbishop of York took no action. Nevertheless, Devamanikam was charged with 6 serious sexual offences, but before he appeared in court, he was found dead.
Okay, so the abuser was the one who died by suicide.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And the complaint at the moment is about Lord Sentamu's inaction. He just let it slide.
I mean, we had some really big inquiry on many years into the various churches, including the Church of England, about this particular problem, namely that they tended to cover up abuse. They didn't take the appropriate action. They didn't bring the police in, and they basically told victims to go away. This kind of conduct has been going on years and years. So it's actually not that surprising that a member, like an archbishop, has been found to be responsible as well. So,
or found to be irresponsible.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, a good friend of mine is Richard Scorer, and he's been involved representing people for many years before courts and in inquiries. He's actually a vice president of the National Secular Society in the UK as well, and he's written a book about it. So he's kind of it is a big thing that's been going on, and it's good. I suspect it'll take the churches a while yet to adjust to the fact that they've got to obey more. And just recently we've heard, is it Jehovah's Witnesses? I think yes, Jehovah's Witnesses
coming up later.
Sorry, are you coming to that later? Okay, well, I won't mention that.
Yeah.
But you're right. Well, maybe to make effective use of time, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea to talk about it's Vanessa or Rebecca Vardy. Am I right?
Yeah. She's next. Yeah.
Yes. So because these two stories, it's later on in the chronology, but the two stories are related because she claims that she was a victim of sexual abuse in the Jehovah's Witness Church, and I think because the Jehovah's Witness is such an insular community, I suspect that child abuse and other forms of even adults being sexually abused is extremely rife because the punishment is so severe. It's shunning, so you can literally lose access to your family, parents, children, siblings, and so I'm very. She's a brave lady for speaking out, and I presume she's no longer a member of the Jehovah's Witness community. Because she can't be a celebrity and be a member of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, that's not going to fly.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely right. Media personality, Rebecca Vardy. Now, for the benefit of Bryce and viewers in America, she is what we call a wag. That's a wife or girlfriend of a rich footballer. And over here, footballers can earn £1 million a week. And so there's hot competition to be their wives or girlfriends. And it's a full-time job when you get it because of the media attention. So
I feel I've missed out here. I can't be a wife or girlfriend of a footballer.
Yes. It's a blatant example of sexism.
Absolutely. I feel so sorry for you. It's gross discrimination. But I would like to say that I feel discriminated against as well because I'm a South African. So I haven't had a chance to be the wife or girlfriend of a UK footballer either. So I'm being discriminated against for my location.
Yeah. Of course, the most highly prized position is to be the widow of a footballer. Anyway, this woman, she grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and she claims that she was sexually abused between the ages of 11 and 15. And there's going to be a documentary about her, and this will do her career good, of course. And so the documentary is on Channel 4. It's called The Jehovah's Witnesses and Me. So she's giving herself equal billing with a religion. And of course, that's fully justified because she's probably much more famous than the JWs are. in the general public's view.
Well, something, John, this might be a nice segue into the next news item because, in a weird way, so the Jehovah's Witnesses are very fast growing in Africa, and I find it extremely worrying because sexual abuse, I think, can so easily be covered covered up in such insular communities. And our friend, Dr. Tai, would actually be able to tell us more about that because he was in Jehovah's Witnesses.
I'm not sure that he was. His mother now is. I don't know.
That's right. That's right. I knew there was a connection there. But, and it's interesting, what made me say that it might be a segue into one of the follow-up stories is the one, well, it's actually the next one, the whole question about separation of church and state, where the National Secular Society in the UK did the whole thing. Because in the UK, in my experience, and I've been visited to your shores a number of times, and I was accosted by Jehovah's Witnesses doing the rounds on the streets every single time I was out there. So ironically, the strict or the strong bonds between the Anglican Church and the government of the UK, I think, has to a certain extent protected the UK populace from the growth of organizations like the Jehovah's Witnesses. So I don't know that if the church-state role is loosened in the UK, that groups like the Jehovah's Witnesses and other evangelical missionaries might cause an unforeseen growth in religiosity in a country like the UK. So maybe you can segue with that comment of mine, and then I will hold my peace, not forever, but just for now, about the whole church-state issue.
Yeah, well, I wanted to bring us in because Guy mentioned a friend of his who is quite big in the National Secular Society, and they held an event. The NSS held an event on the future of church and state, and it was staged in the Houses of Parliament, and just after the coronation, and the intention was to question the bond between the church and the state, because the coronation had just shone a spotlight on how intimate the relationship is. So they held this meeting, and a mixture of priests and what did they call it? Politicians and priests came together to speak at this event, and it included Tommy Shepherd MP. So I think we should approach him, Guy, because he's obviously an MP who is sympathetic towards secularism.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, because of the coronation, there has been a lot of discussion about, the monarchy, church of state, and I've done 3 separate discussions, or I've spoken at 3 separate meetings, one of the Northern Atheists and 2 lots of humanist groups, and I've also published something in Humanistically Speaking, and also on the Atheism UK website about basically arguing the points. I think the cause of republicanism has been advanced a bit, but we've got to go.
Yeah. Can I ask, John, Bryce, what was in America in general, what was the interest in the coronation on your shore? I mean, you and I, as the former colonialists or the former colonized peoples, I'm not sure how to put it. Could you speak to that a bit?
Only a bit, because I did not follow it myself. I was actually in Europe at the time. I think a lot of this was going on. I've only been back in the States for a couple of weeks, and also the circles that I run in, because I've asked this question before, they have tended to not follow this sort of thing. But I do know that there is a subset of Americans, probably a large subset, I can't give you a percentage, that is very interested in the monarchy and the transition from monarch to monarch. They follow the royal family, probably not to the extent that they do in the UK, but there's a lot of people here who it's a form of entertainment. It's almost like the Kardashians here,
Yes.
People will follow it. I think most Americans tend to be more interested in Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, if they're into that. But there was no doubt quite a bit who watched the coronation. I was not among them. But it's more of just a spectacle. It's just a TV show. It's not something that we tend to take seriously. I think it's kind of a curiosity about it because we don't have that here. But also, not something that anyone hopes that we have in the future. It's very much an English thing or British thing, I should say, and we recognize it as that. And it's just, I think it's mostly taken as a form of entertainment.
Yeah. It's like the latest edition of The Crown, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, that's what I think should happen to the monarchy. I think it should be taken out of the Constitution and put in a theme park for entertainment.
I will say there's a lot of confusion in terms of, because I've seen a lot of discussion and debate, not just among Americans, but even among some Brits online about where the power actually lies. And it seems to be consensus is, the power lies in the government with the prime minister and the parliamentary system. But there's a lot of dissension on that point that says no, all laws must be signed by the Queen, or in this case, the King. And so, it's honorary, but
the King has to do what he's told. The King doesn't have a lot of power, but he does have a few powers. Yeah.
So I was very interested to and see, I'm already not holding my peace. I'm so sorry, but I did not know that was it said that bishops are automatically in the British Parliament?
Yeah. 26.
26.
Yeah.
Bishops. It is extraordinary that they sit in the British Parliament making laws for the whole of the United Kingdom, but the Church of England is only established in England. It's not established in Scotland, Ireland, or Wales. So you've got basically foreigners, making laws for the people of Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. That's just one.
I must say that I found that absurd. But something else that I found when Bryce was talking. So I'm a keen follower of American politics. And I think it's so ironic the way we look at the world, because we see the UK as this place where there is no separation between church and state. But I think that in effect, there's probably more separation between church and state in terms of the power of the monarch.
Yeah.
Whereas the United States, there's this the wall of separation between church and state. But I think that the American far-right evangelicals have way more power in American government than the Anglican Church has in UK politics. I don't know. Am I right to say that?
Yeah, sure. I agree with you. Because what we cunningly did, or Henry VIII cunningly did, was he gave away the keys to the castle, which meant that in the 500 years since, the churches have had nothing to strive for. They've had it all. And so they've dwindled and lost significance until they are just a theme show attraction. Whereas in the States, they've never had any power according to the Constitution. So they're still ramping at the bit, trying to grasp hold of the reins of the control of the country.
Well, that was an important caveat you just put in there, John. You said they'd never had any power in accordance with the Constitution, and that is correct. However, in practice, as Tersia was alluding to, they actually have a lot of power. And the United States is a country of ideas. It's a country of very good ideas that, if they were practiced, would be probably the greatest country on earth, I think. And a lot of people try to model their systems after the ideas we have, but we don't. We don't really practice it, and that's a shame, because the Constitution establishes a wall of separation between church and state, but the government never really has followed that through. The reality is, church has a lot of influence in the United States. They don't pay taxes, first of all.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't pay taxes, and people. There's not supposed to be any religious tests to determine who's going to hold any kind of office, but every election you can see the tests play out. I mean, there's massive pandering towards the Christian right. When you look at all of the policy, even Trump, when he was in office, he went outside and took a photograph with a Bible in front of a church after gassing a crowd.
Upside down.
Upside down. Yeah, but it was symbolic of that type of symbolism has a lot of sway in our system, and it really shouldn't, but unfortunately it does.
What you should have done was drawn their teeth out like we did 500 years ago, and then you'd be as secular as us, as non-Christian as us.
I'm not sure about that, because I mean the people who went to the States were the religious nutcases, the fanatics, to get away from.
They knew they wouldn't be welcome here. They could see Europe turning more and more secular.
Well, I don't know. I think there was they were fleeing not so much from a secular Britain in the 17th and 16th, 17th, 18th century. They were fleeing from the Church of England dominance. So you had lots of dissidents and Quakers. There are 20,000 or 18,000 Quakers in the UK, but there's hundreds of thousands of Quakers in the States. So that's where a lot of them went. At one stage there were about 200,000 Quakers in the UK, apparently.
Yes. Well,
and that all touches on the fact that that's kind of, I think, one of the reasons why so many Americans relative to Brits are religious, because it's been part of the culture. It's almost part of the national identity. It has been for hundreds of years. This idea that we are, not only are we Christians, but we're Protestant Christians and American Protestants, removed from the influence of, Catholic. We have the Catholic Church here, obviously, and we have the Anglican. But we said, the idea of, sorry, yeah.
I was going to say, we sent you all of our extremists, and if I'd been around, I'd have been on the dockside waving goodbye.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, but then, John, you would have been a member of some, a squirearchy or a Church of England who were, only about a year's away from burning witches.
Yes, indeed, that's all true. Yeah. So, Tersia, I was going to ask you if you would mind if I played your clip, because.
Play it now.
Excuse me.
I'll just tell the story quickly. I do mind.
Right, because things have been happening in South Africa, and I'd like to introduce Tersia to describe them for us.
So I'm now not talking as a correspondent. I'm talking as an individual who is very interested by the religious events in South Africa. And Bryce, I can say that the situation in South Africa is very similar. There are so many parallels to what's happening in the United States. So in our constitution, freedom of religion is also enshrined, but we have a very religious country. And although there are also no religious tests for holding any office, it is not, there's an explicit statement that it shouldn't happen, but implicitly it happens every single day. And we have a strong evangelical movement. And one of those fantastically evangelical people is a man called Royus Strauss. Now, it's interesting, we began the program with a reference to the Ukraine war. So he has so much social sway that he's been able to organize 2 sponsored trips to the Ukraine to deliver Bibles to the people who are suffering the war in Ukraine. And when he's not delivering Bibles to alleviate the affliction of war in Ukraine, he is he's a crocodile farmer. He has a crocodile farm in the Northern Cape, which is the most arid and least populated part of South Africa. In fact, it's close to the Namibian border. It's sort of in the desert. And he farms with crocodiles and drives out demons. And the demons that he drives out, are the demons of addiction, homosexuality, and now he's added a new demon to his list, and that is the demon of autism. And in the South African press, there's a video that has gone viral where he's driving the demon of autism out of a young man. And there has been numerous complaints. There was actually on one of the Facebook groups that I'm a member of, there was a concerted effort for as many individuals as possible to lodge a complaint against him with the South African Human Rights Council. So I lodged my complaint. I hope many others also did. And I hope that there will be a response to that, because he is actively doing a whole lot of harm. And he has a huge following in South Africa. And he's conservative in so many ways. He's almost, I think he would get on really well with Donald Trump, you know.
Perhaps, but perhaps not, because Donald Trump is not really religious. He just panders because he wants votes. He doesn't care about the Bible or Christianity or any of that stuff. It's all a photo opportunity for him. If this person is, as you say, an actual who believes that they're driving out demons, they would probably want to do some of their magic on Donald Trump, you know, because I'm sure there's some prayer or something they think that they could do to cast out the demon of infidelity and sexual abuse and all of the other things that Donald Trump is known for, you know. So.
Can we arrange to get Donald Trump together with a crocodile?
No. I'll see what I can do about sponsoring that trip.
Thank you. Great. Well, here's some good news because we're coming to the end of the show. And you'll be pleased to hear that a shrinking number of Americans, only 16%, say religion is the most important thing in their lives. And this is the findings of a new survey by the Public Religion Research Institute that was conducted in 2022 and published last Tuesday. So they surveyed 5,872 American adults and discovered that 57% seldom or never go to church. This is a trend downwards, let me tell you. If you compare it with previous surveys staged in 2013 or even as recently as 2019, the numbers were bigger.
So 2022 is kind of a weird year to do a survey like that because it was affected by COVID. And so I'm not sure, between 2020 and 2021, a lot of people probably weren't attending. I would say that church attendance in person was down, irrespective of how deeply people have held onto those faiths. So I don't know that was the best year. It depends on how they ask the questions. But, you know, I suspect that at least it is partially indicative of the fact that less people are religious. The younger you go in the population or by generation, people are less religious. And I think that that's true across the Western world. But it's certainly notable in the United States as well. And we trend towards progressivism, which means secularism as well. It's just a slow trend. So social media and, you know, that sort of connectivity helps with that. People discovering skeptical attitudes, atheism, and all of that, combined with lack of church attendance, I think you're going to get less interested people as time goes on.
Bryce, it's a very interesting point that you bring up, and you just made me wonder. I wonder whether so in South Africa, at least, people go to church because that's what you do on a Sunday. And I wonder what the effect of the lockdowns, because we in South Africa had quite a long lockdown. I think for more than 6 months, there was a prohibition against larger congregations of people larger than 20 at a time. And churches were actually quite angry and upset about this. So I'm wondering to what extent people realized they couldn't go to church for 6 months, and it became so comfortable that they realized, well, I don't have to go, I don't really miss it, and then they've stopped going permanently. Because I would like to see some statistics on how many people would normally go, because if you don't go, people see that you're not there. But when nobody goes, there's nobody to see that you're not there. And now people have sort of fallen into a new pattern of just not going.
Well, there's a bit of a paradox here, because the same survey found that out of those who do attend church regularly, 59% of them haven't considered changing churches. They're stuck with their traditional church. It's very stable out of those who do go, and 82% of regular attenders say they are optimistic about the future of their congregation, and a huge 89% say they're proud to be associated with their church. So if you're still going, you're very loyal.
Well, I think that the sheep have been separated from the lambs, from the goats, rather. So the sheep are the ones that stay, and the goats are the ones that have stopped going when they couldn't go because of COVID. And the really diligent followers are those who, as soon as they could, have started to go back. And that's maybe why they feel so strongly about the communities, because those that have stayed are obviously the diehards, whereas those that have fallen away are the ones that were lukewarm to begin with.
Yeah. So what we've found is those who are soft attenders and those who are really dogmatic, doctrinaire type people.
I would like to see the age breakdown between that as well, because I suspect that it's probably the older individuals who would be more dogmatic and more inclined to go despite the lockdowns or certainly right after they were lifted than some of the younger people.
So the US State Department have also carried out a report, and what they do is they assess the threat to religious liberties around the globe. And they point to Russia, China, and Afghanistan as committing religious atrocities, freedom atrocities, preventing people from having the freedom to do their religion. And they say also that some government restrictions prevent access to holy sites and places of worship. So they looked at 199 countries, and including those that criminalize blasphemy and apostasy and extend discrimination against religious minorities. And they found that there's a growing bigotry at the societal level in many places around the world. Ongoing and deeply disturbing proliferation of anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim hatred, xenophobia that targets religious and non-religious communities. So in other parts of the world, notably those countries that I listed at the beginning, it's getting tougher to be religious. But Belgium has formally recognized its Buddhist minority. So in Belgium, Buddhists are now entitled to teach their faith in state schools and even apply for federal funding.
I mean, they have a system in Belgium where you have to have recognition. I mean, I think in the UK, you don't need any recognition. You just get on and do it, which is a bit of a problem because we do have some very damaging cults, and it might be a better idea if we had a system of registration that checked that these cults were going to obey the law and were not totally, antisocial, not fruitcake type people. Well, I mean, I suppose, how do you tell the difference? But I mean, I know what you mean. There is an issue there.
So, the difference between a religion and a cult, the comedic answer is religions don't pay taxes. But
Oh, okay.
No,
yeah,
no. Well, in the UK, cults don't either. So I think the only real difference is that a religion is bigger and has been around longer
Yes.
and
Yes.
has
yeah.
got itself a bit of social
Yeah.
status.
Usually, the way that
But
they the way that they. Sorry, go ahead.
So, what I was going to say, cults are also tend to be very controlling of people.
Yes.
Yeah, and very secretive as well. They don't.
people like
You're not
Jehovah's
supposed to know what goes on
Yeah.
inside,
Yeah.
only if you're a member. But they don't like to talk to outsiders, and that's
Yeah.
usually a
That
good
kind of
indication
thing,
that it's
yeah.
a cult.
So tomorrow I'm going to be presenting humanism at a school all day, and there's going to be a series of speakers, one of whom is a Mormon, I think. So that's going to be interesting.
I'd love
Guy,
to.
I think you need to. I think you need to come on Free Thought Hour to tell us all about that. I'd love to know what happened there, what your experience was. That'd be interesting.
Yes.
Well, I should be in I should be in the classroom just talking about humanism all day. I won't hear what the other people say. The children will though.
You'll have to bug some kids.
Yeah, maybe.
You wouldn't be able to do that over here in the States. That would be heavily resisted. And,
the situation in the UK is that children have to learn about religion and belief systems. So humanism is in there now. Hasn't always been the case, but we've fought our way in.
Yeah.
We still have a way to go, because in South Africa that would not be allowed, because that would be seen as anti-Christian. So it would be all the way. They would bar me from entering any school.
Yeah, same thing here in the States as well. They wouldn't use that reason. It's not because it's anti-Christian. They would say that you're teaching religion in public school, and that's prohibited by the Constitution, even though they do it with Christianity all the time. But if it was humanism, you can't do that.
Yeah. Christianity has an escape clause.
Yeah, it does.
So, I had it on here a while ago, or actually not on here, but on the Atheism UK site.
John, I'm going to have to shoot, I'm afraid. John,
okay,
sorry about this. I'm going to have to shoot.
Bye, guys. It was lovely to see you again.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I was saying that a friend of mine who is a humanist, and he's a representative on one of the SACRAs, the organizations that are supposedly overseeing the curriculum in secondary schools. And he was silenced recently because he put an item on the agenda, and they found a way to knock it off just before he was going to speak. So the job isn't finished here. We're still struggling. So a couple of items very briefly to finish off. A late 9th or early 10th century book called the Codex Sassoon. It's a Hebrew Bible, and Sotheby's, the auction house, sold it last week for $38.1 million.
Well, if I can jump in there, it was bought by a former ambassador or some official of the United States government, and hopefully it was his own money. And if he has enough money to pay for that, then I'm actually in many ways very grateful, because I do agree with him that books like that should be preserved and it should be open to public access, because the only way to get people to think about their religions and their faiths is to have the books of faith as widely studied as is humanly possible. So I'm actually, it doesn't really bother me. In fact, I'm glad that the book is now on display and available for public viewing and public access, because it means that hopefully more people will get to know where the Christian Bible comes from, and they'll get to know what is actually written in these religious texts. And I think that's brilliant.
They'll only do that if they read it. It was bought by the American Friends of the Museum of the Jewish People, and it will become part of the museum's core exhibit. This is in Jerusalem. Jerusalem, I think. And it was bought thanks to a donation by Alfred H. Moses, who is a former US ambassador to Romania. So there it is. It's gone to its Israeli home. And one commentator said they had it carbon dated. And that was really important because they'd initially thought it was worth less. But when the carbon dating came back, confirming that it's plausibly written around 900 CE, which makes it a little earlier than the other codex, the Aleppo codex, the price went up.
Wow, interesting.
Finally, an Australian doctor who was captured by we think they are connected to Al-Qaeda, a group in Burkina Faso, where he was working as a doctor close to the Niger border. He's been imprisoned for 7 years. His wife was captured too, but she was released after 3 weeks. However, the good news is he has now been released, aged 88, and flew into Perth in good health.
Good for him.
Wow, what a story to tell.
Did they say why?
Why he's been released? No. Oh, well, they did say, though, that no ransom was paid, either by the Australian government or by his family. So there you go. A little bit of good news to end on.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, because I didn't really get a chance to respond off of the first two stories that you read, and I thought it was important to point out that the sexual abuse that was happening under the Archbishop of York, I think it was.
Yeah.
It's just another reason for people to understand that this type of sexual abuse is not necessarily tied to the Catholic Church.
Indeed.
Because that's the Anglican Church, right? And
Yes.
that might have slipped on by a couple of people when they hear Archbishop and cardinals and all of that.
Yeah.
But that's not the Catholic Church. That has
No.
nothing to do with that. This is a completely different church system, and also the same kind of sexual abuse. And then Tersia went on to mention the Jehovah's Witnesses after that. And so this is something that is problematic throughout organized religion.
Yep. The Anglican Church is up to their knees in it as much as the Roman Catholics.
Yeah, because and that's that's why I think that there is this assumption that a lot of people have when they hear about the Catholic Church, that the reason these pedophile priests turn to little boys is because of the rules that they have in place against getting married. But that doesn't seem to work out when you start looking at other religions, because the Anglican Church doesn't have that restriction, right?
No.
Priests can marry in the Anglican Church, right? So it's
right.
not because they can't marry. It's because pedophiles, I think, are drawn to Christianity for a variety of reasons.
I wouldn't say that pedophiles are drawn to Christianity. I think that child abusers are drawn to insular communities where they have a position of power.
Yeah, I should have said the clergy, not Christianity, but
that's right.
The clergy is what I meant.
Firstly, they have a position of power. They have respect to the community, and religions are, whether it's a large religion or a small religion, they are to a certain extent insular, because you have in-group, out-group. And if you're a person of power and respected in the in-group, it's very difficult for a victim to stand up against you, and it's very easy for you as a person of influence and power to get access and to misuse the authority that you have. And I think that's what draws pedophiles to religions, because I think it's as bad in all the major religions, except maybe Judaism. I'm not sure about Judaism, but it's particularly bad in Christianity, because I think in Christianity, and perhaps in the Muslim faith, the church elders and the leaders have massive authority.
Well, let me just let me say that all Jewish clergy and all Islamic clergy, but especially all Jewish clergy, are child abusers. They're just child abusers in a different way, because they like to perform, they like to mutilate babies as part of their religion, right? And so that is a form of sexual child abuse, in my opinion.
Absolutely, you're right.
So, yeah,
it does seem to be that the right combination of factors for being an attractive option for potential child abusers are found in the clergy, because you're trying to recruit young people, and you're considered to be pure and worthy in the community, and so you get the opportunities that you probably wouldn't get if you were, I don't know, a baker or some other profession,
and also a degree of protection in case someone were to accuse you. Obviously we see that you are less likely to face any sort of consequences if you are discovered or found out, if you are a highly respected member of the clergy of any religion, unfortunately.
Absolutely. That's such an important point, Bryce. Thank you for making that.
And on that note, I'm going to close the show. So thank you very much for being members of the panel of Views on the News.
Thanks.
Say bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry-on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys?